Hi there, my name is Kokulumo, the guy with the red cap. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has concerns or has had concerns about the sheer volume of information in the world and how it has made it increasingly difficult to distinguish fact from fiction, leading to confusion and misguidance. This is where I came in. I started fact-checking by asking questions that seeks to scrutinize opinions, practices, and principles across multiple areas, from governance, religion, policy, etc., ensuring that they are grounded in fact and that those who espouse them are willing to be held accountable. And so subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button to keep you updated on my latest videos. For a while, I have sought answers to some 7 questions on global geopolitics and Ghana's economic woes and how the country can wriggle around or out of the conundrum she finds herself. Well, I must say it was difficult to find someone to speak to on these issues with the care and accuracy that is needed. But hey, I finally caught up with a man who has advised a lot of heads of states in Africa on issues of international relations on Wake Up Africa, Dominion TV's flagship program. He's a distinguished diplomat, international development expert, and cultural bridge builder. Dr. Ishmael Dodoo was my guest. And so let's get into the convo now, shall we? 1. In the wake of the complexities of the dynamics of global politics, including waning influence of the 2 of the most formidable international affairs institutions, UN system and the African Union, my question is, what should Ghana's foreign policy be to move the nation forward and pivot the country as the Pan-Africa star of old in the context of the new government research agenda?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, the question that Ghana for so long have been implementing its foreign policy on the basis of what we are, who we are from the colonial, post-independence era, the tone that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah set up, which, invariably imprinted on the minds of many Africans what we stand for. So the Black Star seems to be our punch for a foreign policy, the Pan-African nature of our country, and there's a lot of things that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah pushed in between 1950s and the 60s, asserting the value of the Africanness, looking at African trade, integration, and so on. So those things have guided our foreign policy approach. But of course, it's important that we, as a country, we need to have structured a very coherent foreign policy that defines how we engage the African Union, how we engage the ECOWAS, how we engage the European Union, how we engage individual member states within the African continent. And so it has come to a point where we need to be very intentional, very deliberate about that. The reason being that the world is in flux. The realms of powers are shifting. If you look at globally, we have the emergence of the Chinese, the BRICS, the Russians, threatening some type of unipolar powers. You have the Eurasians actually getting together. China is dominating and leading the ASEAN countries, and then the South American countries are also growing. You have the Brazil and so on.
Right.
Then even within Africa, we are seeing the emergence of individual countries that are becoming quite formidable, positioning themselves. Believe it or not, if you look at what Benin is doing today, trying to become the Silicon Valley of West Africa, which nobody talks about, is incredible.
Indeed, we don't.
Then you have the Rwandese, and then you have Botswana emerging as one of the fastest growing countries in Africa. South Africa is doing quite well in spite of the challenges they have. Nigeria has a strong potential, to become a stalwart on the continent. But look at what is happening recently. In spite of the coup d'etat situation, the policies that Burkina Faso is pushing for food sufficiency and actually food sovereignty, which I'll come back to, because there's a difference between food security and food sovereignty, and matters in geopolitics when you think about that. But seeing Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal, so we have seen countries in our neighborhood, countries that really we have had some relationship with.
How can Ghana position itself in the current turn of US politics, given the return of President Donald Trump, and how some people feel he might be indifferent towards African countries?
I'll answer this question by first prefacing it in a way that I want to posit the Africa. What is the Africa today? You know, we have to interrogate that question. Who are we? What do we stand for? I'm talking about the modern Africa today as we see it. We are seeing a continent that is going to become probably 22% of global population. A continent that is going to harbor about half of the world's population of labor. We are seeing a continent that is providing the hub for the raw material that will be used, what I call strategic natural resources for digital economy. So we're talking the coltans, we're talking the copper, the lithiums, and so on. And we're seeing a continent that can become food, not just food sufficient continent, but can claim its full sovereignty. We have the arable land. Take, for example, the labor force. You know, what do you do with half of the world's labor force? How do you leverage that? Which means, and I was in a program. I was speaking on an international program at the Liberty University recently when I confronted some of the, not confronted, but I engaged some of those Fortune 500 companies.
Okay.
And I made a very strong statement, which I still believe in. I said it is in their best interest to be focusing their energy in Africa to help us leverage or build the requisite capacity that they need in order for them to thrive. In other words, if Amazon or Elon Musk is going to thrive into the next century, then it has to make sure they invest in the critical skills that Africa needs, because we are going to become the labor force for him because of the aging population. So doesn't make an economic sense for Elon Musk to invest in Americans, for example, in terms of growing his labor, because they are aging population. It will get more in terms of returns by investing in Africa. And that is the shift.
I see also the case of you speaking to the Fortune 500 companies and asking them to rather invest in building critical skills comes to mind now. Would you want to advise them to do so in the spirit of they exporting these skills, or they build companies here and make sure that they invest in these skills here?
I am asking them to come to Africa to make Africa the manufacturing hub. There's no reason why we should be importing tablets into our economy. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tablets, millions and millions of units of mobile phones. Who is manufacturing them? Who is assembling them? Can't we, as a continent, be the hub that can manufacture those things?
Do we have the hardware? Do we have the raw materials? Do we have what
we
it
do
takes?
have the raw materials, and what we then need is the critical capacity that needs to be built here. Okay. So, for example, I would imagine Ghana, where we are, and I'll still come back to the BRICS question, but imagine Ghana where we are, where our geospatial location is very important. There's a reason why the GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, passes through us. By the way, one of the things that we are not aware of, there's off the shore into a place in the waters in the Nugua area. When you stand on that, there used to be a stone. When you stand on it, your GPS reads 0.00.
In Nungwa?
In Nungwa area, and that shows. Now, what that means is that the GPS reference point was actually taken from the continent. From Ghana, has anybody asked whether we should be paid something as a country?
I see.
These are the questions we need to ask. We are living in a country, we are in the realms in Africa where it's no longer tenable to think like we used to be thinking 50 years ago. It's no longer tenable to not ask the critical questions that can help us. We should ask ourselves, why should we keep importing mobile phones why can't we manufacture at least some of the parts of the mobile phone?
Are there African countries that are doing that already?
Well, I haven't seen any African country that actually is positioning itself position itself to that. Look at Taiwan and others for chips manufacturing. They position themselves for it.
Okay.
So the starting point for us is say, can we do it? How? And I think this is the question that our continent needs to ask. We need to start asking the question, when can we start stopping? Where can we stop importing some of these things and having them manufactured here for us? Because the labor force is going to be shifting into the continent.
And you think Ghana must lead that conversation?
I think for West Africa, Ghana must lead that conversation. And this whole idea of a new economy that we're trying to structure, the 24-hour economy and accelerated export and all of this must be the basis of what Ghana should be. Ghana needs to have a very strong industrialization policy, a very strong human capital strategy, not educational policy. We need to have a human capital strategy. The difference is that the human capital strategy will position you for the skills, the talents, and the capacity you need to make the country become the hub of your manufacturing and industrialization that you are looking at. And that could translate into some digital skills, crowdsourcing, analytical skills, which means that even from kindergarten all the way, primary school, theaters, all the things we're going to do, our curriculum needs to be, if we use borrow the word reset, needs to be reset to fit that strategy. So that our workforce becomes very capable and fit for purpose for the 21st century skills that we are looking for. Without that, Ghana cannot. And in fact, Ghana can leverage economies of skills. We have Togo, we have Benin, we have Burkina Faso, we have Cote d'Ivoire, all these countries that are around there. So we have our brothers, Nigerians, and so on. You can look at their market and begin to see, in the context of agricultural products, which of them can we process and export? In the context of digital economy, could we have the hub, we become the hub that actually will maybe start putting together mobile phones so that the mobile phones that are supplied across West Africa is coming from Ghana, or tablets supplied is coming from us? Could we be the country that actually have a very efficient railway system that can manage the supply chain across West Africa? We're talking 1.3 trillion market economy in West Africa. I mean, how much do we want to have? 77 billion GDP per year for Ghana is too small. We should be running 300 billion GDP. I missed the point on Trump.
Okay, Trump, yes,
right.
You did.
So I think the point, so let's look at U.S. growth. U.S. policy is going to shift into one that is going to be very intentional. So Donald Trump, his thinking is, even in Canada, we need to have a special trade relations with them. I don't want to join whatever existed before. NATO is asking for transnational relations. It's asking for transnational relations with the European Union and everybody else. And it's not going to be different from Africa. What they see is that we have a continent that seems to work in block, but it's in flux. We are not truly united to know what we are looking for. So what we must do as Ghana is to offer a value proposition to Trump, to the United States foreign policy, to say, hey, we are the stalwarts in West Africa and we play a very big role in Pan-Africanism. And these are the key areas that we want to engage in with you in terms of your American foreign policy. And that could be in the area of manufacturing and trade. It could be in the area of food security, food sovereignty, in the area of security. It could be in the area of geopolitical strength and mobilizing the African continent around common issues. It could be also in the area of looking at 21st century skills, etc., 21st century digital economy, noting that we have most of the raw materials that would drive that here. How do we engage? And also selling this point about you are having an aging population. We are a very youthful population here. How can we begin to see transference of skills?
Should that be done as Ghana or the African Continental Free Trade Area?
We have to do as Ghana. And then we leverage our leadership to promote the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. What that means is that Ghana becomes a very powerful entity, playing our geopolitical leadership role and also playing our economic role. So, you have a country where our youth and have incredible jobs in all different sectors, in productive sectors or the digital sectors or in service sectors. But at the same time, we become so integrated across West Africa or within Africa that we can also have some African countries actually coming here and working with us. And which means that even our human capital strategy is for every child to learn a second language, which is French.
How can my guest advise the new president of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, on foreign affairs matters of Ghana and how Ghana can promote Ghana's economic interest, cultural heritage, and values abroad, and what strategies would we or should we use to attract foreign investment?
I saw something around the 120-day policy that the new, His Excellency John Mahama has put forth, and one of which is something related to Black Star Experience, where we want to package and sell the Black Star Experience. What that means is just looking at cultural tourism, the slave trade and the stories around it, the historical sites. For historians who want to learn about slave trade, that they can actually walk through those sites, and that could actually bring in quite a lot of money because it's from historical perspective and academia. I mean, for example, the UK sell the English language for billions and billions of pounds every year for people just coming to learn the language. We can sell, the slave trade, whatever negative part of it. But
so it's point 20 launched the Black Star Experience initiative as Ghana's flagship arts and tourism brand to transform Ghana into a preferred tourism destination.
Right. So it's branding the country as one where the slave came from here, but they can also return and have prospects, economic or cultural prospects here. The second is to really look at what we do with our tourism. If we want to attract tourists into the country, you need to prepare the destinations for it. If you look at our coastal lines, this is no way ready to promote tourism, coastal tourism, for example. We have talked about the beachfront. They talk about the drive, the economic drive, I've forgotten the term they used. But then the driveway, the beachfront driveway. If you look at Virginia Beach, for example, the way they have constructed it, could we do something like that, really manage our beachfronts extremely well? Which means that we need to reorganize Accra. The urbanization of Accra needs to be properly looked at. We need to go back to certain iconic buildings that existed, which would give very good stories about what Ghana used to be in the pre-colonial or during the colonial sector. For example, Watto represents a place where in the 1950s the cream de la creme will go and settle and enjoy themselves. We used to have UTC, we used to have Bartholomew, we used to have all these. So somebody can...
these are strange to me, though.
I'm
younger.
UTC used to be a trading company, used to be a place where the London is here. Everything you go and get in London, you can find them. Bartholomew was when they produced the cars in the European Union, in the UK dominant cars. You go there, you see those are where they said those from that place they then ship to other countries, even to Europe.
I see.
For example, there's a place called Atukpai, which is on the Swalaba Salaga area, off the post office side. Now, Atukpai is actually Otuopai. Otuopai was referring to the place. It's actually a place where the British and the Ghana and the Akwemus fought and pushed them away to reclaim the Ghana state. So these are
iconic places.
Iconic places.
And they are still there?
They are still there. All it means, all we have to do is somebody to create this, tell the story, so you can have some urban tourism around them.
So it brings foreign investment.
Foreign investment to these places, and then you build it up and tell the story. So when people are there and they're doing something there, they know, this is a spot where this what happened. It helps us to really expose the cultural tourism of, and this is just Greater Accra. But what about Eastern region? What about Northern region and all? There are all these iconic places that we need to design and have a whole tourism experience, kind of a package to sell. Now, we have to look at economic tourism, for example. I would say, maybe I'm coining my own term, but this is part of economic diplomacy. The prospects that this country holds is a lot. It's very high. This country can become a manufacturing hub for major companies. And that can then manage, and then it can be the country that can manage a supply chain of goods and services across West Africa and to some extent Africa. Now,
recently, the outgone president of Ghana, Akufo-Addo, announced a visa-free entry for African nationals. My question is, how can Ghana take advantage of it to promote the African continental free trade area agenda?
The timing of the visa-free, I would question that. I think that, you are outgoing president. Someone is, and this is a very major decision that you've made. And decisions such as these require very extensive consultations and so on. I mean, imagine that His Excellency, the former president, have done that, and his team have probably advised him on that. But there's something about politics and power management that we have to be very careful about, which is that if you are going president, such major decision could be in a handover note for the next president to reconsider, to think about, because he also come in with his own ideas, and it would be useful that he will have the time to consider such major decision. Having said that, I think that it's a good thing if we could have the integration of the continent.
Okay.
I find very disenchanting where you traveling to neighboring countries, then you used to have visa. Now with the ECOWAS passport that we have, we don't need visa to move around.
Okay.
And I think in that spirit,
West Africa.
West Africa. Okay. But also with Ghanaian passport, you don't need visa to go to Singapore, for example. You don't need. So there's an advantage, because it will promote trade, it will allow free movement of goods and services. The disadvantage here, or the risk here, is bad people can also enter if they have that passport. So somebody could be from South America who is a drug pusher, but looks like an African, and just have, it doesn't even look like that, but you have a passport. How do you catch these people? So we need to, in the wake of a region where there's a lot of terrorists and things that we haven't addressed, we should have really thought through the whole visa-free process to bring in some controls that can help us to catch bad people, that can, destroy. So if somebody comes in, if 5 terrorists comes in with a visa-free, they can be in our country and plan something. So the security implication is very critical, which is why I was talking about the timing, because you need to give him the time to be able, the new president time to think about. But relating that to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, we need, for that to happen, we need efficient movement of goods and services, particularly free movements, and in ways that is not too costly. Okay. So it will certainly help. It will certainly ease some of those pains of traveling.
Also, looking at the current state of the global geopolitics and the fact that Ghana is struggling economically, what should Ghana do in his attempt to fix things?
The diaspora have that money. They are wealthy Black American individuals who combine wealth. When you put maybe 10 or 20 together, you can be able to raise over $2 billion, $200 billion that can be invested into manufacturing and so on and so forth. So there are different ways you can do this. Maybe a diaspora bond, for example. Okay. You can pull together LeBron James and some of those big names in media, in sports and media and arts entertainment. Very often, they give their money to come to Fortune 500 companies to grow for them. But they will be very excited to have their wealth being pushed here, really invested into.
And they will have gains.
And they have gains.
Okay.
So through some kind of build, operate, transfer, wouldn't it be interesting for Beyonce, LeBron James to be associated with the railway lines across West Africa? I mean, they will love it. And their combined wealth is probably $40 billion, I think. And you need only $10 billion to build a very sophisticated railway. This is nothing for them. You know, we have to begin to think smartly how we engage the diaspora. And this year, and then the question is that what did the year of return do, which really brought in quite a number of people. But at the time the year of return came, we still have our foreign direct investment going down, even by 40%. So the question is, what did the year of return do beyond the euphoria of dishing out, passports and so on?
So we're not intentional about it.
It was, I believe the entertainment side was cool. But
we need to cash in.
We need to cash in. Then the other thing is about brand.
Okay.
Look at our music. Where has High Life gone to? Why have we thrown that away? Whereas Senegal continued to keep what they have. We used to Drew and so on. And people remember the High Life a lot. When you walk, I was in Virginia, in Chelsea, a slave town, and they could remember Ghana, the music. Okay. And they were dancing to the High Life. But here we are. We don't want, our young guys don't even engage in High Life anymore. We sold everything out.
I see.
As a country, we need to begin to, as part of this Black Star experience and tourism, we need to ask ourselves, what differentiates us from the rest of the world? In Africa, West Africa, what is the Ghanaian brand? So if Koku, is in Senegal and he says Ghanaian, what makes him stand out from a Senegalese?
I was saying that today, the identity, the Ghanaian identity.
We need to have that. The Ghanaian identity is very clear. And some of the ideas that, we speak very well. We speak English extremely well. Now our children are not learning the English the way they should learn it. We need to go back, speak our English very, very well. We dress well. Ghanaians are known for good dressing. Look at the president in inauguration. The combination of Kente and what he did,
yes.
is in an incredible brand. We need to have our tailors and so on being very innovative. Okay. We need to have a line of clothes that can be exported so you can see it overseas.
Ghana is also considered a beacon of African democracy. Now, what role must Ghana play in leading peace and stability in Africa?
Yeah, I think Ghana has a very powerful brand. If you see what happened in inauguration, 21 head of state and 13 special envoys and so on. And I was sitting among some of the dignitaries and the faces I saw, and it was very interesting, and the interactions that was going on. And I heard that, afterwards, the socialization of these important dignitaries that came to the country, all is presenting a very interesting message diplomatically, that President John Mahama's presidency is well received, but there's a high expectations of him leveraging that stature to bring Africa together, to solve the problem within the West Africa, especially with the Sahel region versus ECOWAS, some of the challenges associated with it. To also look at the complexities or the multidimensional nature of our challenges that we are facing today, and come and provide leadership, because clearly Ghana had lost its leadership, to convene its convening power and leadership in the last 8 years, asserting our Africanness in everything that we do. So it is very important that we do that. And having Traore, for example, coming from His Excellency Traore, coming from Burkina Faso, you saw the euphoria that associated with it.
What was that about? Is it people loving the issue, Ghanaians who were present, they're loving the issue or the phenomenon of revolution? Or it's just probably what we have learned is done over time?
In the 1980s, when coup d'etats were happening on West Africa, it was called a dark decade, because the coup d'etat was all aboard. Of course, ECOWAS and African Union has no gun, policy. Again, that coup d'etat has to be expunged from our democracy, and it's extremely important that we assert the essence of democracy, good governance, and to be honest, democratic governance to lead us. But things have changed because the democracy have not provided or yielded the dividends that people are looking for.
Okay.
It has not created the jobs. It has created a hegemony around political leadership, where perhaps if you are a member of parliament or you are in politics, in high-level politics, then you are automatically you become rich. You have all the controls of contracts and so on and so forth. So power has become an economic force, and if you don't have power, then you don't have an economic force, and therefore the teeming masses, uphold the whole tenets of politics and democracy. They have lost faith in our democracy and institutions. Now, what the Sahelians have brought, and also the whole control of the economy and the politics from their colonial powers, France. And what the Sahelians brought is different. They're saying, we're going to give you back the power. We're going to destroy that hegemony within political leaders that makes them richer and you become poorer. And we're going to deal with anti-colonial issues.
Okay.
And that's what he represents. And this is the Gen Z thought. This is a new generation thought. They don't understand why someone else should be controlling the economy. And they don't understand why they don't get the jobs. And they don't understand why, become a member of parliament. I'm not actually putting anybody in the spot. A member of parliament within 4 years, you build 3 houses, 4 houses. And, some of our leaders, in politics and previous government who died, the sort of wealth that they amassed when it was displayed.
Yeah.
And then you have the oral agenda, which is exposing so many things and the corruption. So I think he represents the opposite. And to some extent, he represents the euphoria of Trump.
Okay.
In America, drain the swamp type of thing. Yeah. So back to the question of how do we
the role of
stability and peace and providing a leadership, the Pan-African leadership. I think the first thing that His Excellency needs to do is as part of the researching agenda is to really look at ECOWAS and its relationships with the member state. The whole ECOWAS structure itself, the sort of normative rules and standards they have, and there must be an honest conversation about how do we make them more modern to reflect the current trends. Nobody wants coup d'etat, but everybody wants good governance and development. Indeed. Now, if head of state of military nature are providing peace, stability, development, then people will say, well, that's the kind of governance we want.
True.
But it is not a governance that can last.
Yes,
because
it's
not sustainable. So we have to interrogate some of those things. And also, alongside that, within the context of its own constitutional reform, that Ghana will come out with a constitutional reform process that could become an example of what could be the new terms of constitution that should run or guide our democratic governance. Because by and largely, things have changed. We are becoming more and more autonomous. And then you decide who you want to engage with. This block and unity is important. But if I'm not getting out of that, I'm not getting much out of the association, then I have to rethink about it. For example, look at mobile phones, the tariffs of data and calling. Why is it that it's cheaper for me to call the US than to call Senegal? Why?
Is it?
Yes, try it.
It's cheaper to call someone in the
US
than in Senegal?
Yes. Why? Why is it that it's cheaper to sometimes fly to the US than to fly to Togo? Think about there are a lot of things. So can we not have a uniformity of tariffs? That doesn't matter whether in Togo, Guinea-Bissau or wherever, the tariff is the same. And look at the monies that, I'm not putting them on a spot, but look at the monies that the fintechs are making. MTN.
Yeah.
If they tell you they are, and then who controls MTN and who owns it? Now we have our own mobile technology phone, we're giving it to a foreigner, and it controls it. Now we have to be very careful, because the world is about data. The world is about what you have, have big data. And anyone that have control and can manipulate big data can do a lot with it.
I see.
Your genetic codes can be put on big data. So if we start getting everything, outsourcing everything to foreigners, we have a major issue. Even food. 90% of what you eat, anyone you import, and the things you depend on. What if the region where you import those things from, they decide to put something in it to make all the males sterile, so that they will come in and marry your woman. So we have Ghana full of Chinese and running this country. This is a security issue.
It might sound wild, but this is.
No,
this
I intentionally make that assertion because it's concerning to me. Anybody who controls what you eat controls you. And that's why we need to have food sovereignty first. And that's why I like the whole idea of agribusiness within the context of our economy. Every person, every citizen needs to put their energy around promoting food sovereignty for this country. Let me tell you something. In 1950s and 60s, prior to 1950s, before independence, the colonial countries were producing enough food for themselves and for their colonial powers. We were food sufficient.
Then.
The moment there was independence, we became less food sufficient, and we were producing cash crops to feed their stomachs of the. So we lost our food sufficiency and started producing cash crops for them, cocoa, coffee, to feed their lifestyle. And they've determined the standards of cocoa, coffee unitary, and they do the manufacturing. So they make 100 billion, 200 billion profit, whatever.
Dr. Abu Sakara was sharing this.
And then you are getting peanut and raw materials. These are all pre-colonial structures that control global economy that we need to disrupt. And we must disrupt it now. Because if we don't, it's going to backfire on us and even decimate us. So you need to turn the table around to be full sovereign, so that you can control what you eat and control the health of your people.
I see.
I mean, you see sausages all around.
Where did they come from?
Where did they come from? Could they be human beings who are being packaged as sausages for us to eat? What is the health implication? How much budget are you putting on national standards boards to protect us? So reset means that you have to protect the security of your citizens.
And finally, the success and respect of African descent everywhere is tied to them working together, both on the continent and in the diaspora. And so what are the best ways to achieve this particular feat?
Let me just do a very practical, very normal mathematics. We have close to 1.5 million Ghanaian diaspora.
Yes.
And these are people that are really registered, and they are they are strong and good gainful employment. And these 1.5 million individuals can part with $1,000, maybe
$1,000, which is of course more like 10,000, 11,000 Ghana cedis.
Yeah.
They
can part with it. So 1.5 million, 1,000 is $1.5 billion. That alone can cater for 50% of the rail transport that we want to establish. What if you convert each of the 1,000 into some kind of stock and create the Ghanaian diaspora bond? This is the thinking of how we can raise external financing to invest into our infrastructure and so on. And they can bring this money, because if they know that this money could make sure that all hospitals will have beds, they will have all the capacities that they need, all the medications, and their mothers, when they are old, or anyone is old, they can get the best treatment. They can part away with this.
And they'll make sure that the monies are used for.
And we can guarantee the monies are used for that. and they can go into a system where they see their money, and they have some coupon that tells them, thank you for, contributing to the thoracic center, cardiothoracic center of Ghana, and now 5 million Ghanaians are able to access because of your $1,000
dialysis,
whatever it is, and the country is working. I mean, it's not difficult for Ghanaians to do that, and most of them
are willing to. And I'm sure they would even do more than $1,000.
Of course, they can pull into this. So that's why we need to, as part of our research agenda, make sure the country works. They minimize corruption, strengthen accountability system, mechanisms. All these systems and everything must be working. Our public administration must be efficient and very effective. There must be discipline in our country. We need to abhor things that don't work for us. I mean, our gutters are choked, and we have to live as normal people.
Okay.
It's not that we are abnormal, but we have come to the point where our psyche is more about survival. And that is not good for a group of people. We are not surviving people. We are smart, very capacitated. We are children of God, and everything good is required of us. Yeah. We have the intellectual capacity to make ourselves good. So a part of the research agenda, we need to make sure that we, the citizens themselves, are shaping the policies that will work for us. We need to get involved. What about our schools? What type of education we want? What quality of education do we want? School infrastructure. Is it right that we still have over 2 million children sitting under trees, on blocks to study? What are they going to learn? If you create all these, you don't create enabling environment for our children, how then do you inculcate the skills that they need to grow their talents for the country? We are a gift to this nation. This nation is a very powerful nation. Ghana, the Black Star is a brand that is powerful. You go abroad. I've worked with over 36 countries in Africa. When you mention Ghana, everybody wants to talk to you. And because I speak French, there's always a great opportunity to interact with the Francophones. They relish this country. They relish this country.
Interesting. Final words. Are we ready to research this country? In 2 minutes.
I believe we are ready, and showed in the elections that people are very hungry for the research agenda to happen. What we need is to pray for the president to put in the right team, people that have the right capacity, the right leadership, and the right attitude to be able to drive this. We need to, and leaders need to be supported by critical-minded thinkers and analysts who can help them with the data they need to be able to make the right policies and prove it. I think that's what we need to do. We can do it. We are capable.
Dr. Ishmael Dodoo, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
We are grateful. Thank you. My name is Kokulumo. Subscribe to my channel as I continue to fact check a lot of these topical issues just for you. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.